Hello everyone, it's Professor Oleander again. No, I'm not dead. I'm very much alive, or at least that's what they tell me these days. Been very, very busy. Started a new job. I work at nights and just have not had the time to really work on any of these things. Um, I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks I'll be getting a different job in a different state, so I'll be moving and I'll have a different work schedule and things will be going a lot differently for me and a lot better. That being said, I have some time tonight where I wanted to sit down and do another poster tutorial. For this particular one, we're going to be focusing around motion blur and how you can make a static image in TF2 look like it's moving, or give the illusion of movement. So I'm here on CP Freight Final, which is one of the control point maps. I like it because it has a lot of good lighting. So if you want to follow along, that's the map that I'm on. I'm going to turn off ambient occlusion here so that way we don't have any lag to deal with. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new camera by hitting C if I can find it on my keyboard. And there it is. Make sure that I select it. And we're going to go out into the freight yard here. And one of the things about this map is you can choose either side. We're going to be focusing on the middle here. You can shoot it from the blue side, you can shoot it from the red side. The red side is all in the shadow because the sun is back that way and the light's being cast from somewhere around here. So there's a second sun up there somewhere because it doesn't match, but anyway. So yeah, you can put a light back there and light that up if you want to, but for this particular poster we're going to be focusing from here. So somewhere around in here, and want to be focusing. I want to have that in the background, so we're going to back up. If the screen turns black like that, or if the skybox turns black, it's because you're clipping through a wall or you're clipping through the map in some way. So we're going to bump ourselves forward until we get the blue sky, and I think that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and make an animation preset for the camera, and let's go to the lens presets and go to 35 millimeter. Oops, I got to go into the motion editor first. 35 millimeter. Something about like that right there looks pretty good. Actually, get some of that sky out of the way there. Anyway, if you've ever listened to Zach Scott, who's a brilliant animator, he talks about negative space whenever you're framing. This is negative space. That's where there's nothing in it. That's a lot of negative space right there. That's a little, or there's still a lot, little bit less. Something about like that. That way you can tell, a little bit of skyline's good. So that way you can tell. It gives you a sense of scale, how big these buildings are, stuff like that. That right there. Yeah, no. Let's just no. Okay, so we're going to get this roughly on a third. Something about like that right there. Roughly a third line right in here. Another third line right there. This is on the intersection of 2/3. And, stuff like that. Maybe bump it down just a little bit more. It's a little bit off. If we want to rotate the camera, just hold while you've got the camera selected, just hold the R button and then just pull one side or the other. You want to straighten it up just a bit, and I think that's about perfect. So I'm going to leave that alone. We're going to pull this to the side, go into our work camera here, and just kind of zoom out there so that way we can move about. Now, this particular poster has two working entities. We've got a camera and a model, and that's all I'm going to be using. No lights, no motor cars, not a single luxury, just like Caruso, as primitive as can be. So, new model. I'm going to be using the SFM Pennsylvania Railroad T1 model that was submitted to the Steam workshop, to the SFM workshop, I should say. There's two versions of it. The first version is a low poly model. The second one, with the SFM on the back, is the high poly model. That's the one we're going to be using because that's how we roll. we're going to grab it and we're going to plunk it down onto the railroad track, get it square with the railroad track, so that way it moves in the direction of it. And this is sort of important. You want it to be square or parallel with the track, and I guess it would be parallel. Square would be perpendicular, but you want it to be parallel with the railroad track because we're going to put animation on it in one axis. And if it's if it's off a little bit this way or off a little bit that way, it'll magnify over distance. So if you're off like a half a degree this way, over time it will veer this way. Same thing the other way, it'll veer off that way. So you want it to be as straight as possible. And just kind of get down here and look, and it looks like everything is straight. Maybe cocked a little bit towards the back. Yeah, it's actually off a little bit on the back. So just, whoops, 1 degree of precision. We're doing this NASA style. It looks about good. So, yeah, about good. Yeah, perfect English there. Looks good. Just kind of get that off there. And if it intersects a little bit with the track, that's fine. You're not going to see where the wheels actually meet the track because of this little curb right here, and because of the camera angle we're using. So I'm just going to go down and make sure, and it's actually off a little bit, isn't it? Just kind of move this over to the side and maybe bring it back. I think that's too much, isn't it? Now that's on. If it's off just a little bit, we're not going to be doing animation over any great distances, so it won't make that much of a difference. I think that's going to be close enough. And just make sure the main thing is to make sure this front pilot isn't digging in, because it'll look bad, and it is digging in, so we're going to pick it up. About like that right there. That actually looks good enough for government work. Okay. Next step is going to be, we're going to kind of be eyeballing the camera over here. We're going to go ahead and frame this somewhere just to get an idea of what we're going to be wanting. And for this particular one, we're going to be wanting something about like that. And, that's a perfectly good poster right there. You can export, print, make millions and millions and millions of dollars. I wish. Yeah. So, next thing's going to be going into the graph editor and kind of move this over. We're going to go ahead and put some animation on this train. So, what I usually do is I'm going to grab just the root transform. And there's a couple different ways you can do it. We're going to be focused around the 1 second mark in terms of where we want the frame that we're going to export as a poster. That's the one we're going to be concerned with, is the 1 second mark. You can make a keyframe on the 1 second mark in the graph editor, but if you do that, what happens is there's a motion fall off when you're dealing with curves. So if you have animation stop at the 1 second mark and you're also rendering at the 1 second mark, it looks a little weird because you've got this either a full stop or you have this slowing curve in your animation that makes it look like it's slowing down. So to get past that, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go past the 1 second mark. We're going to go about 3/8 of the way past the 1 second mark to 1.375. But for right now, we're going to go to the 0 mark, and we're going to put animation on the train. We're going to bring it back to a point about right there, just past this little archway. Then we're going to go ahead to the 1.375, scrub forward, and we're going to pull the train forward past where we want to render it to somewhere about right there. And then when we go to the 1 second mark, we notice that it's off, and we have to pull it back to about right there or so. So we go back to 1 second, and just about perfect. We can pull it back a little bit more if we want to, somewhere about right there, and go back to the 1 second, and that's perfect. That's exactly where we want it. And at this point, you can go into the clip editor, and there you go. I'm going to go ahead and make a bookmark on that so that way I can find it easier. The train is blurred because it's moving in relation to everything else. Everything else is static. One thing you notice is that you can see the spokes on the wheels. We can fix that really quickly. One of the handy things that came with this model is a set of animation sets. We're going to go in here and find wheel spin very fast. We're going to uncheck the box for root animation. And when we go back into the clip editor, you can see that now these are moving. Now you can change this. You can change the velocity of the train. You can have it moving a greater distance over a short amount of time. You can have it moving a shorter distance over a great amount of time. Whatever you want to do. You can also go into the render settings, see how this is fairly blurred. You can increase the number of samples that you take. We're going to do 128 and 128. And it will become a little bit clearer. It'll still be blurred, but because it's taking more samples per frame, it will be a little bit clearer. So we're going to leave it at 128, 128. So that's the first way to do motion blur, is having one object moving through a static scene, and then just having that object blurred. My favorite one is this one. We're going to select the root transform of the model. We're going to grab the root transform of the camera, which is just this one right here. We're going to parent the root transform of the model to the root transform of the camera. Select the transform of the camera, go into the procedural tab, and select the playhead preset. Now if I come out here, the camera is now moving in time with the train. It's moving at the same velocity, same rate of speed, over the same amount of distance, so everything is matched. Now if I go from here into the motion editor, or the clip editor I should say, the locomotive is in focus. Everything else is blurred. And what this is signifying is that as far as the camera is concerned, itself and the locomotive are not moving. Everything else is moving around them. And because everything else is moving around them, the objects that are moving at the same speed, they look like they were standing still, because as far as they're concerned, they are. And everything else around them gets smeared. That's what this is. This is sort of a pixel smear, because everything is moving faster than it can be rendered out. And you notice that because we put animation on the wheels here, the spokes are blurred because they're moving, and it just makes it look like it's booking down the line. Now I said there were 3 different ways. The other one's probably the least popular, so we're just going to unlock this and just hit playhead to take the animation off of it. You would do the camera the same way that you do the the same way you do the train, which is go into the graph editor here, go back to 1, come up this way somewhere about right there, and then go 1 to 1.375, go back a little bit, go forward, there we go, and then just grab the X transform and just come out this way somewhere like here, I think's right. And then when you go into the clip editor, go to your 1 second mark, and it's actually a little bit further than it needed to be. Like I said, this is probably least popular, and the reason for that being just because it's you can't really see anything. But it's useful for, like, say on this map in particular. I'll give you an example. let's say, you know, you've got two cars going down the road and you want to have the camera on one of them, but at the same time you want the object that you're looking at to make it look like it's moving. So you've got two cars that are meeting, the camera's on one of them, and they're going to pass each other. And same thing here. Like, say that these buildings weren't here, and so you had a train coming from this direction and a train coming from this direction, and you wanted to have a camera, which you don't have to have the train at that point. You can just have a camera mocking the train coming from this way to like that, and you can actually do it so you can trick the camera into making this thing in focus and moving that way, or you can have it blurred just to kind of give it a sense of speed. You know, there's all sorts of things you can do it. It's a lesser known application. I'm just doing it because it's one of the ways you can do it, and because I wanted to show something once if I can get it right. That's still a little bit too far. So let's go back here for just 1 second. Go back into that, and go there, and just bring this back. If I can grab it. Right there. I think about right there is right. Let's see. Yep, that's it. So, what you have is you've got cameras going one direction, the train's going another direction, and everything gets blurred. Everything except for this thing. That sign in the back, remember how I told you that because of the arc, things that are further away appear to be moving slower? It's the same thing here. If I zoom out, here's the camera, here's that sign. That sign is way, way over here. It's further out on the arc. So if you think about it in a circle, the stuff that's really close, like these barrels and these crates and these buildings right here, they're moving pretty fast. And what this can do is it can give you the illusion of depth in terms of how deep back your picture goes. And it's the same thing with cameras, not cameras, but paintings. You know, the more layers that you can put into something, the deeper it looks. Same sort of thing. These are really, really close. Your eye is going to tell you that because these are blurred so much, they're close. Same thing here. These are blurred a little bit less, less. It's almost standing still. Now these are going at the same speed, and I couldn't tell you what the speed is because I don't feel like calculating it. But because this is so far away, it just looks like it's standing still. Plus the angle through which we're looking through this little alleyway right here, it's steep enough to where this spends a lot more time in the same position than anything else. So, you know, that's the third way of doing motion blur. And like I said, it's cool if you want to, you know, if this camera represents another passing train and you want to do that, and you can play around with this. You can play around with the focal distance and the aperture and all that. So, you know, that's just one other way. Like I said, it's least common. But what I want to do, let's go back in here for a second. I want to do the second one like we did before. So I'm going to lock that onto that, and then put the animation on the camera like so. Just make sure that's right. Yeah, okay. And let's go back into the clip editor here for a second. This is the one that I like the most because it just looks fast. I mean, you can tell the train is what's moving. It's just flying through here. And like I said, to finish this out, we've got those on there. We're going to go ahead and finish out the camera. So we're going to remap the focal distance because it's not deep enough. 1000. And we want to set this up to it just in front of those drivers. About right there. We're going to bump the aperture way up. We're going to go ahead and turn on AO and show ambient occlusion. Bump up the bias and then the strength. And we're going to bring the bias back down until we can see the grab irons up there. Actually, we need to bring the strength up just a little bit more. Yeah, you see those grab irons coming in? These are the grab irons right here, if you don't know what I'm talking about. They're handrails. We call them grab irons. And then the radius, whichever way you want to go. I want to go this way because I want to show some of these smaller shadows right here where the crates are. And let's go into the clip editor and give it a second. Let it render out. Make sure that everything is the way we want it. And it is. So we'll go in here, uncheck this box, give it another second or two, let it go through the frames and calculate where the motion blur is going to fall. And there you go. Everything is pretty nicely blurred. Maybe a little bit too much back here on the blue side, but you can adjust that with the aperture. I'm not going to mess with it right now because I'm not going to render this one out. But yeah, really cool effect. These boxes right here help to push this into the background so that it's, breaks it up a little bit so you're not all dead space right in here. But that's pretty much it. No lighting, just playing around with cameras and motion. So that's pretty much it for this one. I hope I didn't ramble on too much about it, but I'm hoping to do at least one or two more on these in the very near future. One thing that I had mentioned on my Google Plus channel is that if you're interested in having me make a poster for you, just send me an email on YouTube or send me a request on Google Plus if you've got me favorited or whatever. No charge. The only thing is I'll do them whenever I have a chance, and so it may be a few days. If it's something relatively simple, I can probably knock it out really quickly, but for free, no strings attached, whatever, no COD, shipping and handling, all that sort of stuff. But that's it for now. Like I said, I will put a link in the description to this model right here, and I hope you learned something. If not, I'm sorry. So yeah, that's it. Take care, guys.